Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. This is the first episode of Orange Plate Special. We apologize for the delay. We've been sorting out a technical gremlin. We're still working on that, but we wanted to go ahead and get started. I'm Mark Blakeman. I'm the Marilyn and Carl Thoma Executive Director of the McKnight Center for the Performing Arts at Oklahoma State University. It very much looks like I have a lovely virtual background behind me, but I'm actually sitting on the stage of the recital hall here at the center. And we have for our very first guest for Orange Plate Special, China Forbes, lead singer with the band Pink Martini, who will be performing as part of our second season. China joined the band in 1995. She was recruited by her friend and Harvard colleague, Thomas Lauderdale, founder of the band, and has been singing with them for the last 25 years. China, thanks so much for joining us. We're delighted that you could take some time to be with us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
So for those who might be less familiar with Pink Martini, maybe you could just start by giving us a brief history lesson on the band, talk a little bit about the genesis of the band and how it came together, and what makes Pink Martini such a unique ensemble.
Well, the band was started by Thomas Lauderdale, my Harvard friend, and he is a pianist. He's been playing since he was 6 years old, and he's a great, fun accompanist who's kind of willing to do anything. And in college, we would collaborate a lot. He would accompany me on arias when I wanted to sing opera, or The Way We Were by Barbra Streisand, or the theme from the TV show The Jeffersons, and all those songs we would sing together. And when I graduated, I moved to New York to be an actress, and Thomas moved back to Portland, Oregon, where he grew up. And I didn't hear from him for 3 years. And then out of the blue, he called me and said he had started a band called Pink Martini, and he had a fight with the singer and he fired her, and he needed a singer for that weekend, and he had some very big shows lined up. And could I come? And I was just disoriented because I barely knew where Portland was. And finally he persuaded me by offering me more and more money. And I was an actress between jobs, so of course I
starving artist
go. And so he sent me all the music on a cassette tape from one of their live club gigs, and I listened to it on a plane to Portland, where I landed and immediately was introduced to this sort of Shangri-La of Portland, where coming out of New York City, it was like everyone knew each other. It was really pretty and green and friendly, and lots of bands and kind of punk rock, and it was really kind of an amazing place. And I met a lot of his friends who I'm still friends with, one of whom is my second ex-husband, the father of my child, who I met the day I landed. So it's been such a crazy twist in my life. And Pink Martini was this it was inspired by Pee Wee Herman's Christmas special, where he had all the different guests pop up, for one sentence, like Oprah and Katie Lang and Magic Johnson and all these big stars. And he just wanted that kind of variety show, and he wanted that kind of variety of music inspired by just zaniness. So it was the theme from Hernando's Hideaway, the song Amato Mio from the film Gilda, starring Rita Hayworth, Que Sera Sera, done in a minor key. It was all this kind of twisted, very broad, eclectic, multilingual repertoire. He loved foreign films, Pedro Almodovar's films, Spanish music from those films. So that's what it was. And it was so different from anything I was doing. And yet, because of my theater background, I kind of fell into it kind of easily, playing different characters, singing these different styles. And it's because I think it's so nostalgic, and the foundation of it is beautiful melodies. Like, that's what the focus is on. It's just become this timeless band that's been embraced by so many people. It's kind of amazing for 25 years.
25 years is a long run. You mentioned the foreign languages, and I wanted to ask you about that. Reading the bio materials and having listened to a lot of your music, it references 20 different languages, 25 different languages. Were you a student of foreign language previously? How do you go about preparing a song in a language maybe that is unfamiliar to you? Is that part of, are you pursuing, diction coaching, so that you can be, spot on with your languages?
No. The first question, was I a student of language? Yes. So growing up, my father's father is French, and my father spoke French. He loved his French relatives and his French culture. And so I was sort of surrounded by that, and I studied French as my second language in school. Then in high school, after the movie A Room with a View came out, I realized I wanted to sing opera. So I started studying Italian. So I studied Italian in high school. I later lived in Rome as a mother's helper for a summer. So I have a decent foundation in Italian and a better foundation in French, but I've never become fluent because I've never lived there. And I feel like I just can't become, quick with speaking the language. Although when I do Duolingo, I get everything right. And it's like, it seems like I'm fluent, but I'm totally not. So I guess that semester and a half in high school really helped me a lot. But I ended up not studying opera, just doing it for, singing for fun with Thomas in college. And yet the French and the Italian was enough where I could sing in Spanish pretty easily. And then the languages started to get more complicated, like Arabic, where I could not make all of the sounds that you just either are born doing or you cannot make. And other languages like that, in Turkish and Thai. I mean, I've sung in languages I don't know at all, and it's basically just phonetic and coaching by somebody and trying to remember all the little puzzle pieces that you don't necessarily know what they all mean, and then infuse it with some sort of emotional meaning. And then when you go to Syria and you're in front of a crowd, you forget one piece of the one domino and the whole thing falls apart. That happened.
Sounds like a lot of pressure.
But the thing is that's nice is people are really forgiving. I've learned over the years, even Parisians, they'll say, "Oh, your French is getting too good. Stay cute. We like when you make mistakes. We like your weird accent." So that's nice to find out.
That's great. That's great. In addition to being lead singer for the band, you have written a number of original songs as well. And I wanted to ask if you could just talk with us a little bit, share with us about how you go about your songwriting, and are those songs that you write with a collaborator, or do you tend to write independently? Are you the lyricist and somebody else is working on the musical composition? What's that look like?
It's really very diverse. I mean, I started out writing songs as a very young person, on my guitar, on the piano, by myself. I put out a solo album when I was 25, right before I met Thomas, of all original songs that I wrote alone. Then when I got in Pink Martini, the whole repertoire was covers, and I just felt like we should write some original songs. So Thomas and I collaborated for the first time and wrote the song that became our biggest hit, which is Je ne veux pas travailler, that song Sympathique, which is the title track of our first album. And it's very catchy, and the French, all of France, knows this song now,
right?
Which is great. My dad passed away when he was 59. So that was 22 years ago. And he would have been so happy that we have become well-known in France. And so Thomas and I started collaborating, and it was really interesting because I was going to be a singer-songwriter, doing folk rock. And then Pink Martini was kind of this fun diversion. when I started writing with Thomas, who comes from a classical background, we kind of complemented each other in this really nice way. And we began writing more and more together. And we wrote many of Pink Martini's songs, like Lily and Clementine and The Gardens of Samson and Beasley and Una Notte a Napoli and Let's Never Stop Falling in Love, just a lot of our songs, Aspetta-me. And that was great. So it's really fun to collaborate, but I also still write alone all the time. I basically write, when Taylor Swift came around and she's like writing her diary, I mean, I've been doing that too my whole life. It's like how I express my feelings, my sadness, heartbreak. It's always into a song.
Yeah. Hey Eugene, that's a song that you penned, correct?
That's a song I wrote by myself before I was in Pink Martini. And it's a song, it was like this boy I met at a party who it seemed like we really hit it off. And he asked me for my phone number, and then I never heard from him again. And he was like, is it too soon if I call you Sunday? It was like that urgent. And then I never heard from him again. So I waited, and then I had so much frustration. I just wrote this sort of run-on sentence, which became the song, Hey Eugene. And every detail in the song is exactly what happened and in that order.
Nice.
So it's very satisfying to put something.
It's a great song. It's a really great song. You mentioned that initially you were playing covers.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just curious, was there a collective effort from band members suggesting cover songs, and was that a collaborative process, and were the arrangements a collaborative process where everybody's kind of adding their own elements to create a unique arrangement of that cover?
We do. Thomas was generally picking the covers in the beginning, and then we would often arrange as a group, and that was really fun. Those days were fun. We would actually have rehearsal, and we would work through something, and people would suggest parts, and it would just kind of come together that way. As time went on, sometimes someone would recommend a cover, and sometimes someone would arrange it on their own. It just sort of, it changed.
Right.
But I liked those days when we arranged all together. It was really fun.
So you've been with Pink Martini for 25 years, which, as I said earlier, is a very long stretch. I'm curious to know if there's a particular performance that kind of stands out for you as special or particularly memorable. And I'm also curious to hear about how you kind of keep it fresh, so that you have the right kind of energy, that you bring the right kind of energy to your performances each time.
That's so funny you asked that, because yesterday my son was having his virtual piano lesson, and the teacher was saying something about playing a song over and over again. And she was like, your mom must know what it's like to sing the same song over and over again. And they're like, how do you do it? And I was like, you have to do it different every time. I approach it like it's fresh, and I try to just mix it up. It's sort of the same way I do banter on stage. I don't have canned banter. I once saw a performer, I'm not going to name, do the same exact word for word banter every night. Like a big Hollywood star who's wonderful, but I was sort of like taken aback. It just seemed so fake to me, so I always say it as if I'm saying it for the first time.
Right.
I do that with my
want
singing.
it to be organic.
Yeah. And I try to create an atmosphere for myself that's sultry and like where I can sort of lose myself in the song. And that, I think, brings something different each time. And then the first question about the performance that was most memorable, I would say, I grew up in Cambridge, Massachusetts. My mother lived in New York City, and she lived 2 blocks from Carnegie Hall, next to the Ziegfeld Theater, in a kind of an unusual, not very residential neighborhood. And when I graduated, I moved into that apartment to do my acting years. And then I moved to Portland, and I never thought we would play Carnegie Hall. when I moved to Portland.
Mm.
So when we did, it was so overwhelming and surreal. And it was very much a Cinderella moment for me, because I have dear friends in Portland who are friends with the designer for Carolina Herrera. So they loaned me some dresses, and I was wearing this ball gown, and I had someone like a very Rick Pepino, who's a famous hairdresser, do my hair. Like all these friends were pulling in favors, Mac makeup artist. I came out and I definitely felt like I had become Cinderella, and it was so incredible.
Yeah, Carnegie has such a rich history, and I can only imagine, to be a part of that would be really an incredible experience.
It really was.
A lot of fun. I know that there are other singers that sing with the band. I don't know how those, responsibilities kind of get divided, but I'm just curious about how that affects the energy of the band. Does everybody basically sing the same repertoire, or does the set list really kind of change significantly depending on who's doing the vocals on a given night?
Yeah, I mean, it changes. There's certain songs that we always perform, so it stays the same. But then there are some songs that, like, no one does Hey Eugene but me, and I don't do Storm Large, who filled in for me when I had vocal cord surgery. She does a song in Romanian that I don't do. And so there are a few songs like that, but in general, we kind of, when I'm not there, she does the lead, and when she's not there, I do the lead, and then when we're both there together, we have to sort of divvy up some of those songs.
Right.
And it's a very unusual situation. I think that it's the reason we could last for 25 years, because all of the things, the tensions that build up and the issues that build up that break up a band, the air was kind of let out of all of that when I just like lost my voice, had to go have vocal cord surgery, and a new singer came in. It was like, and then we decided to keep going like that so that I could have more time off with my son, and it was a great opportunity for her. And so it's just, I think it's allowed us to continue this long.
Right. That's really terrific. The McKnight Center is part of the Oklahoma State University community. And typically when we invite guest artists to perform, we work to create learning opportunities for the students here on campus. So we create access to our guest artists to do coaching and master classes and things like that. I'm curious to know if there's any particular career advice that you'd impart to university students here who might be interested in pursuing a career as a professional singer or performer, or want to put a band together. Any advice, or any advice that you received early on in your career that you'd want to put forward?
I would say my first instinct is to say, write your own material if you can, because just in terms of making a living, I've written a lot of songs, and like that, even though you don't really get paid anymore for your work, and no one buys albums anymore, there is still streaming revenue, that sort of passive income. Like during this time when we've completely stopped performing, it's nice to still have some income coming in,
Right.
And so on a practical level, like it's really good to have that. Also, it gives you more autonomy. I mean, the more autonomy you can have, the better. I say play an instrument, write your own songs. That way you can collaborate with others. You can do what I did, which is put down your guitar and start just singing with Pink Martini for 25 years, but you can still pick it back up and like do your solo thing on the side, diversify.
Right.
Don't just have one thing that you can do, I guess.
I tend to think of performers as entrepreneurs at heart, and I know a lot of people that have made a living, but they have a number of different, angles to the activities that they engage in, and that those things come together, and one part of their career might slow down, but they've got other things that they're also working on simultaneously. So,
yeah. And also collaboration is good, because then
yeah,
you have a big pool of people to
if
learn.
you weren't performing, if you were in an alternate universe, what would you be doing? What do you think?
I would love to say I'd be a screenwriter, although, as my sister can attest, who is a screenwriter, I've never finished a screenplay. So I have so many ideas and so many great plots, but like, maybe if I had nothing else to do, I could do that. But I'm really drawn to architecture and interior design. So I think that I just love designing things. So I either architecture or even clothing design or design, all
Yeah,
kinds of design.
that's terrific.
Mm-hmm.
During this pandemic, we were talking before we went live about sheltering in place and the quarantine environment, and how people have chosen to spend their time. Some people have picked up some new hobbies. Have you engaged in anything new over the last couple of months that you want to share with everyone?
I not new. I've re-engaged old hobbies. So
Okay.
I majored in painting at Harvard for 2 years before I switched to English, and I used to paint a lot, and I don't paint anymore. And so during this time, I just turned 50 along with several of my best friends, and so I made portraits for my friends, and that was really rewarding. And I would love to do more painting.
That's great. That's great.
Find a space.
We have about 5 minutes left, and we've got some questions up on my board here in front of me from people that are watching on Facebook. And I wanted to just touch on a couple of these. Doug B from Facebook asked, where do you draw inspiration from for writing your lyrics?
Thank you, Doug. I would say that it could be literally anything I see, I hear, somebody says something, some phrase. It's like, ooh, that could be a good title for a song. I'm always hearing titles that start the song.
Interesting.
But it's like, I'm like a net catching things all the time. And also the biggest inspiration is, of course, heartbreak. So whenever I have heartbreak, there's a lot of songs coming from that. And it's just such an incredible outlet. I mean, I think that for mental health, if everyone could write songs, people would be in a much better place.
Brian P., also watching on Facebook Live, has asked, with the limitations of the current COVID world, how have you been able to scratch the itch of performing together, especially being part of such a large and dynamic group? Have you felt the absence of not performing?
It's funny. Sometimes I do have this, I feel a physical reaction, like a physical ache to sing with like my full projection in a way that I would do on stage, which I don't do in my living room. So that's something that I've noticed a lot. I've been really weirdly like having a good time being alone. So I haven't felt like, oh God, I need to be a part of an ensemble right now, just because I've been doing that for 25 years on such a constant basis that I think of this as my sabbatical, and I'm taking the sabbatical. I'm writing songs on my own. I'm making videos and posting them to Instagram at night, late at night. And just sort of, that's my performance outlet right now. And it's fun because I've been planning to do more solo work and make a solo album. So like this, this has been a time where I could do more of that.
Right. Andrew, we'll just do one or two more. Andrew from Facebook is asking about the variety of instruments that are used in the ensemble. He asked a question about arrangements, which we've already touched on a little bit, but could you give us just a quick rundown on what the instrumentation of Pink Martini looks like? Because it's fairly unusual.
It looks beautiful from the audience. So There's a singer in the center. Then there's the grand piano, violin next to that. Behind the violin is Timothy, the backup singer slash percussionist. Then there's guitar, Dan Fanley on guitar, Phil Baker on bass. And then we have a drum kit, which could be Reinhard Meltz or Andrew Bolger. Then we have percussion, Brian Davis, Miguel Bernal on congas. He's from Cuba, and he brings like an incredible Cuban expertise.
Some authenticity there.
Yes, finally, some authenticity. And then we have two horns. We have a trumpet, Gavin Bondi, and trombone, Robert Taylor. And sometimes when we're in Europe, we have Misho Yosifov on trumpet from Bulgaria, and we have a Greek trombonist named Antonis Andreou.
Wow.
So did I forget anyone? Miguel and Brian sometimes play bongo in the front of the stage. And I think that's everyone.
It's a real melting pot, isn't it?
Yeah.
We'll do this. This is our last question here from Holly. She's asking about, is there a particular genre or subgenre of music that you haven't written or performed for that you'd like to pursue? And similarly, is there a particular language? I mean, you've done almost every language, it seems like, but is there a particular language that you'd like to sing in that you haven't pursued that yet?
Okay, so the genre that I've thought would be really fun is either fado or tango. I don't know that much about it, and it would be fun to learn more. And I really want to dance flamenco, so anything where I could dance flamenco. And then what was the other question? Oh, a language.
About the language.
God, are there any more languages?
I don't think there are, actually. I think you got them all.
I mean, Swedish has been requested. Polish seems really hard. I'm getting old, and I don't know if I can take on Polish at this point.
Right.
These languages are just, when I took on everything as a younger person, it was really fast and I could memorize it. And now it's sort of like my eyes cross, and I think this is going to be a lot of work.
It is a lot of work.
Yeah.
And, I would think difficult to retain all of that. And you mentioned, you have one little hiccup and it can all unravel very quickly. So
in Syria, before you couldn't go to Syria. I mean, we actually went to Damascus and I forgot the words.
Yeah. Happens to everyone.
I
think. So happens to everyone, I think. So.
I'm going to write a song called I Forgot the Words in Damascus. Mark my words, guys.
We can't wait. We'll be watching out for that. I want to say thank you so much for joining us today. Pink Martini will be performing at the McKnight Center on Thursday, April 1st, 2021. Tickets are not available yet, but you can contact our box office and be put on our wait list. That's the best way to get into the queue for tickets. You can call us at area code 405-744-9999, or you can email us at info@mcknightcenter.org. And I want to invite all of our viewers to join us next week, Wednesday, June 10th, again at 12 noon Central Time, for our next installment of Orange Plate Special. We'll be joined by Anthony McGill, Principal Clarinet of the New York Philharmonic. Some of you may recall that Anthony performed as part of our opening gala weekend last October when we opened the McKnight Center. Of course, that was as a member of the New York Philharmonic, and he'll be coming back in season 2 as a special guest artist as part of our 4th annual Chamber Music Festival. So we'll talk with Anthony next week. It'll be a lot of fun. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and I hope you have a great afternoon. Thanks.
Thanks so much.